Recently, I posted a video about masking, the little ways that we hide traits, like forcing eye contact or pretending that we understand a joke. But we all know that masking goes much, much deeper than that. It doesn't just shape how we interact, it shapes how we see ourselves, how we parent, how we work, and even how we survive. And if you're AuDHD, you're not just masking one set of traits, you're carrying double the load of autism and ADHD at the same time. Today, I want to take you on a deeper dive into masking, the toll it takes, the research behind why it's so damaging, and how I've been learning how to slowly unmask. Because the truth is, masking did keep me safe to a degree for a number of years, but it's also nearly broken me. Hi, I'm Jess, that AuDHD mom. I'm here to help you understand your neurodivergent brain. On this channel, I share the real-life, unfiltered version of living with both autism and ADHD. In my first video on masking, we covered the basics, what it is, how it shows up, and why it's exhausting. This time, we're going deeper. We'll talk about the different layers of masking, how it affects our identity, the research linking it to burnout and mental health, what masking looks like specifically in AuDHD, and some of the steps that I've been taking to unmask safely. So if you've ever walked away from a room wondering if you've actually been your true self or not, this one's for you. Masking is often described as those surface level behaviours like forcing eye contact, changing your tone of voice, suppressing stims or other autistic behaviours. But it actually operates on multiple levels. In 2017, a study described this as camouflaging, a mix of hiding, compensating, and mimicking. On a surface level, it just looks like changing how you move or speak. Maybe you force eye contact even though it really stings, or you fake a smile to look approachable, or you keep your hands rigid so people don't notice that you want to flap or fidget. On the social level, it's about fitting in, people pleasing, shifting your personality, depending on who you're with. Maybe with one group you play the funny one, with another you're quiet and agreeable. And then with another, you're the organiser that holds everything together. It's almost like wearing different costumes for different audiences. On the life level, masking spills into every setting. Parenting, work, university, relationships. For example, in parenting, it might mean forcing yourself to join in small talk at the playground or at kids' parties, even when your senses are screaming. At work, it might mean over-preparing for meetings, so no one sees how much you're struggling with processing things or blanking out. In relationships, it might even mean hiding meltdowns so that your partner doesn't think that you're too much. And then there's the identity level. The deepest layer. That's when you've worn the mask for so long that you genuinely don't know where the mask ends and where you begin. You might not know your hobbies outside of what other people expect. You might not actually know what you enjoy eating. You might not actually know how you actually like to dress, because those choices were always filtered through what will make me most accepted by the group that I want to be accepted by, or what will make me seem most normal. And that's why so many late diagnosed autistic people, those with ADHD or AuDHDers, look back and wonder, do I even know who I am? Or have I just been performing for decades? And I think many of us can relate to that heartbreaking moment of realization that the version of ourselves that people liked isn't even really the real person that we are. We often talk about masking like it's a choice, but for most of us it began as survival. From a young age we would have been corrected when we were too much, too quiet, too fidgety, too blunt. Maybe we were told to smile more, to stop being weird, or to try harder to fit in. After enough of that, you learn that being yourself equals rejection, but masking equals acceptance. For many of us, masking was a shield against bullying or exclusion, sometimes even against physical danger. Some autistic kids, for example, will learn very early on that flapping or rocking makes them targets. So they freeze, tense their body, and internalize shame about the movements that bring them comfort and regulation. It's also about belonging. Masking can help us get jobs, keep friendships, maintain relationships for a period of time. It's smiling at the right time, laughing at jokes that you don't get, pushing through sensory overload so you're not the difficult one. And then with parenting, I cannot tell you how many times I've stood speaking to another parent, trying to maintain small talk while my brain is buzzing from the noise, the wind, the kids shouting, but I'm still forcing the smile because that's what's expected of a good parent. And research backs this up. Autistic children often develop camouflaging or masking behaviours after repeated negative feedback from adults and peers. Over time, this basically becomes automatic, but that doesn't mean that it's any less damaging and any less difficult or exhausting. If you're AuDHD, the load is doubled. You're masking ADHD traits like distractibility, forgetfulness, or chaotic energy, whilst also suppressing autistic traits like the sensory needs and stimming. It's 2 full-time jobs stacked on top of one another. But here's the cost, and this is huge. First, exhaustion, the constant performance, the feeling of running a script every single time that you leave the house. Then burnout. Research now links chronic masking directly to autistic burnout. And if you've experienced it, you'll know that it's not just being tired. It's a full body collapse. It's losing skills that you had before. It's being unable to function in the ways that you could just 1 week earlier. There's also the emotional whiplash. You're on in public, smiling, nodding, making eye contact, and then you get home and collapse in tears or rage or silence because you spent every ounce of energy pretending. Masking also hides traits too well. It leads to misdiagnoses. I masked my way through school, through work, I still do, and even through healthcare appointments. And because it looked like I was coping, nobody saw what was underneath. In fact, in appointments with mental health services when I was younger, they literally used to write that I appeared to be well dressed and put together and that I was talking and engaging. Now, I know that that's quite a common thing that they want to look at with mental health, but it's so important to realise that a lot of mental health patients, if they're autistic, of course they're going to do that. It's masking. That's what it is. A 2021 study found that adults who camouflaged more reported much higher anxiety and depression. And then another study in 2018 connected chronic masking directly to autistic burnout. So this isn't just tiring, it's harmful. Passing as normal often comes with the cost of our mental health and sometimes even our safety. When you're both autistic and ADHD, masking might feel like running 2 conflicting operating systems at once. The ADHD side is pushing you to cover the chaos, to perform togetherness, to overshare, to be funny, to hide disorganisation. The autistic side is pushing you to suppress, to sit still, to force eye contact, to mimic the people around you. So in real life, it looks like this. You overshare in conversation, then you panic about it later, then shut down and withdraw because you're embarrassed. That cycle of overshare, panic, withdrawal is exhausting. Over time, that tug of war erodes confidence. You feel like you can't win. If you let your ADHD traits show, you're too much. If you let your autistic traits show, you're too different. And masking both means you're constantly exhausted. That's double masking, and it's double the cost. You might want to look into how ADHD masks autism and vice versa in my video here. Masking isn't just about behaviour. It shapes who we believe that we are. When you've masked for decades, you can lose touch with your own identity. Many of us genuinely ask, who am I, really? We fall into roles, the funny one, the quiet one, the high achiever, the reliable organiser. We adopt these roles because they're safe, they're accepted, they're rewarded, but they're not always authentic. Over time, this disconnect can grow. Maybe you don't know what you actually enjoy anymore because you always went along with what your friends liked. Maybe you don't know your true fashion sense because you always dressed to blend in. Maybe you don't know your sensory needs because you spent years ignoring them. A study in 2022 found that chronic masking leads to identity confusion and lower self-esteem. And I think that so many late diagnosed people can identify with that. For some, unmasking isn't just about learning who we are, it's also about grieving the years that we weren't allowed to exist as ourselves. So what do we do with all of this? Unmasking doesn't mean throwing away the mask entirely, Sometimes we do still need it for safety, for work, for survival, and that is okay. The key is creating safe spaces and safe people where we don't have to wear it all the time, and finding things that you can unmask that don't affect what it is that you're trying to do. For instance, allowing yourself to stim or wearing ear defenders or headphones in places that you previously would have just struggled through. For me, unmasking has been really slow, very small steps, allowing myself to use stim toys or just to move my body more in public, admitting when I don't understand something or I need more processing time for something, saying no without giving a long excuse, and then being honest with my kids when I'm overwhelmed or overstimulated. And research supports this. In 2021, a study highlighted that masking reduces burnout and improves well-being, but only when it's done safely. For me, unmasking isn't about never masking. It's about building a life where I can choose not to, where I can make small changes that reduce the overwhelm that builds up. And every small step, every moment that I allow myself to exist without performance feels like a breath of fresh air. It's scary, but it's also very freeing. So, masking is complicated. It kept me safe, but it also kept me small. If you're still masking, you're not weak. You're surviving. If you're beginning to unmask even in tiny ways, you're not failing either. You're learning to live. Both are valid, both are allowed. Masking kept you safe, but unmasking will help you heal. If this video resonated, please hit subscribe. I post new videos every week on AuDHD, life, parenting, strategies that actually help, and the science. If you want to go deeper, I created a 7-day unmasking guidebook. It's full of prompts, reflections, and strategies to help you explore who you really are underneath the mask. You'll find it in the description, along with all my other AuDHD resources. And remember, there's loads of free ones too. I release them every week. And I'd love to hear in the comments, what's one thing that you didn't realise was masking until after your diagnosis and reflecting on your life? I'm Jess, that AuDHD mum. Let's make this space make sense for our brains.